She collapsed at the crossroads with nothing left but a dead man's dream and a heart too broken to keep beating. The desert had burned away everything, her hope, her strength, her reason to go on. Then he appeared through the dust like an answer to a prayer she hadn't prayed, and said 5 words that would change everything. "Follow me home, ma'am." But accepting his kindness meant betraying a promise to a ghost, and some promises she believed were meant to be kept forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Stay with us until the end of this story. It's one that will touch your heart. And comment below with the city you're watching from, so we can see how far Olivia's journey travels. Now, let's begin. The horse died first. Olivia Green heard the animal's breathing change, rough, wet, wrong. She'd been walking beside the mare for an hour, too guilty to ride, watching each stumbling step. "Just a little further, girl." The horse made a sound like tearing fabric and went down hard. Front legs buckled, then the back rolling into the red dust with a thud that Olivia felt in her chest. She dropped to her knees beside the animal. "No, please. Not you too." The mare's eye found hers, dark wide, already glazing. Olivia put her hand on the horse's neck and felt the heartbeat slow. Felt it stop. 11 minutes. She didn't cry. Hadn't cried since the funeral. Tears required something inside you to still be working, and Olivia wasn't sure she qualified. She stood, pulled her canteen from the saddlebag, 3 swallows left, maybe less, looked at the crossroads ahead, north, south, east, west. 4 ways to die alone. Edward's voice in her head. Silverwood, Livy. Our future is in Silverwood. Edward was 3 months in the ground. Olivia picked a direction and started walking. 2 miles, maybe 3. The sun pressed down like a hand on her shoulders, and the black morning dress soaked up heat until she thought she'd burst into flames. Her vision blurred. 1 foot, the other. First one again. When the rider appeared, she thought she was dying. He came out of the heat shimmer, like something she'd conjured, lone figure on horseback, moving steady across the hardpan. Olivia stopped. Swayed, blinked hard. Real. Please be real. The rider saw her, turned his horse. Her knees went. Whoa there! Strong hands caught her arms before she hit the ground. Easy, I've got you. Olivia looked up into a weathered face. Clear blue eyes, dark hair under a wide-brimmed hat. 35 maybe. The kind of face that had seen things and survived them. Water, she managed. He already had his canteen out. Slow sips. She obeyed. The water was warm, but she didn't care. Thank you. You hurt. He was still holding her elbow. What happened? My horse died. His jaw tightened. How long you been walking? I don't know. Hours. Alone? Yes. Something flickered in his expression. Anger, maybe. Ma'am, you'll die out here. Where were you headed? Silverwood. I have land there. My husband's land. Silverwood's 30 miles north-northeast. He studied her face. Your husband? Dead. 3 months. Silence. He looked at the sun, calculating, made a decision. Name's Jackson Xavier. Jax. I've got a ranch 5 miles from here. You can rest, eat, figure out what's next. He held out his hand. Or you can keep walking and be dead by sundown. Your choice. Every lesson Olivia's mother had taught her screamed refusal. A widow didn't ride off with strange men. A widow maintained her dignity, her reputation, her "I can't keep walking." Then don't. She took his hand. He pulled her up behind him with easy strength that made her feel weightless. Hold on. She wrapped her arms around his waist, pressed her cheek against his back, too exhausted for embarrassment. The horse started moving. I'm Olivia, she said quietly. Olivia Green. Well, Mrs. Green, Jack said, and there was something warm in his voice that made her chest hurt. Follow me home. The ranch appeared suddenly adobe house barn corral. After hours of nothing, it looked impossible. A woman came onto the porch. 40 dark hair in a bun, sharp eyes that took everything in. "Jackson, what did you find now?" "Lost traveler." Jax dismounted, reached up. "Olivia Green, meet my sister Margaret. Maggie Mrs. Green was headed to Silverwood on foot. Horse died." Margaret's expression shifted. "Good Lord. Inside. Now. Jackson, water from the well." Olivia's legs nearly gave out when her feet touched ground. Margaret's arm went around her waist, firm and sure. "I've got you." Inside was cool and smelled like bread and coffee and something cooking. Olivia's stomach clenched. "Sit." Margaret pushed her into a chair. "Don't move." Olivia sat. Margaret returned with a wet cloth, pressed it to Olivia's forehead, the back of her neck. The coolness made her gasp. "Sunburned. Dehydrated. When did you last eat?" "Yesterday. Some jerky." Margaret's mouth pressed thin. "Jackson." Jax appeared with water. Poured a cup, put it in Olivia's hands. "Drink." She drank. 3 cups. By the 4th, her hands had stopped shaking. Jax set bread, cheese, and dried apples in front of her. "Eat slow." Olivia looked at the food. At these strangers. "I can pay." "Hush." Margaret sat across from her with a bowl. "Eat first. Talk later." So Olivia ate. Margaret let her finish before speaking. "Silverwood. What's waiting there?" 20 acres. My husband bought it before he—" She stopped. "He had a dream. Wanted to build something." "But you were going anyway." "It's all I have left of him." The words came out fierce. "The deed has his name on it, his signature. I can't just abandon it." "How'd he die?" "Consumption. Started in St. Louis. We thought desert air would help. Got worse instead. He lasted 3 weeks in Tucson." "I'm sorry," Margaret said. "Everyone's sorry." Olivia heard the bitterness. Hated it. "Sorry doesn't change anything." "No, it doesn't." The door opened. Jax came in, washed his hands, sat. "Stage to Silverwood runs through Cottonwood Springs," he said. 12 miles east. Comes through Tuesdays and Fridays. Today's Monday." Olivia's stomach sank. "Tomorrow. If you're up for it, but you're not." Jax met her eyes. "You need rest. At least a day." "I can't impose." "You're not imposing." Margaret's voice left no room for argument. "We have space. You'll stay." Olivia looked between them. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you need help," Jack said simply. "And we can give it. Doesn't need to be more complicated than that." Something in Olivia's chest twisted, gratitude mixed with shame, mixed with something else she couldn't name. "Thank you," she whispered. Margaret nodded. "Finish your stew. You look half dead." After eating, Margaret led her to a small bedroom. This was Jax's daughter's room. Matter of fact, but Olivia caught the tightness around her eyes. "You'll be comfortable here." He has a daughter. Had. Fever took her and his wife 4 years back. Margaret smoothed the quilt. "He doesn't talk about it." Olivia's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Like you said, doesn't change anything." Margaret moved to the door, paused. "But maybe it helps, knowing you're not the only one carrying weight." She left, closing the door softly. Olivia stood in the dead child's room, wearing a dead husband's dream like chains, and finally let herself cry. She woke to voices outside her door. "She can't make it alone." Margaret firm. "Not our problem." Jax gentle but resolute. "Jackson Xavier, don't you dare." "Dare what? Save every lost soul who crosses our path. I'm asking you not to send her to die." Silence. Long enough that Olivia held her breath. "What do you want me to do?" Jax finally. "Ride with her to Silverwood. Let her see what's actually there. Help her make a real choice instead of chasing ghosts." And if she still wants to stay, try to make it work out there alone. Then at least she'll know what she's choosing. Margaret's voice softened. You remember that first year after Caroline, when you couldn't think straight, when you made choices just to keep moving because standing still meant feeling everything. Another silence. Yeah, Jack said. I remember. Olivia closed her eyes, shame burning. They were talking about her like she was broken. Maybe she was. She waited until the voices stopped before joining them for dinner. Roasted chicken potatoes, green beans, simple good. Margaret watched until Olivia's plate was clean. Better, you've got color back. I feel almost human. Good. Jack set down his fork. Because I have a proposition. Olivia tensed. What kind? I'll take you to Silverwood, not to the stage, all the way to your land. You'll see what you're inheriting. Make your choice with your eyes open instead of blind faith. Why would you do that? Because Maggie will make my life hell if I don't. He ignored his sister's eye roll. And because I've been where you are. Making choices because you think you owe the dead something doesn't always end well. How long? 2 days' ride, maybe 3. We'd leave day after tomorrow. I can't ask. You're not asking, I'm offering. He met her eyes. Take it or don't. But think before you say no out of pride. Olivia wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could manage alone, but she was so tired. All right. The words surprised her. Thank you. Jax nodded once and went back to his dinner. After they sat on the porch, Margaret brought coffee, strong black, perfect. How long have you been here? Olivia asked. 8 years. Bought it cheap from a man who gave up. Built most of the house myself. And you? Olivia looked at Margaret. 3 years. My husband died. Jax needed civilizing. Someone had to teach him that beans and coffee wasn't food. I was doing fine, Jax protested. You looked like a wanted man. Children crossed the street. Olivia laughed. It came out rusty strange. Both of them turned to stare. Sorry, she said quickly. Don't apologize for laughing. Margaret's voice was firm. Lord knows there's little enough reason these days. They sat in comfortable quiet after that. Olivia found herself studying Jax's profile in the darkness. What did you do before? She asked. Before this? Drifted. Cattle drives, wagon train security, whatever paid. He was quiet a moment. Met Caroline in Santa Fe. She convinced me to settle. Said I needed roots. So we bought this land. Had Emily a year later. The names hung between them. She would have been 9 this year, he continued softly. Emily. She had this laugh like bells. Made the whole house feel bright. Edward used to hum while he worked, Olivia heard herself say. Little fragments of songs. Didn't even know he was doing it. After he died, the silence was... She swallowed hard. Worse than the grief somehow. Yeah, Jack said quietly. I know that. Margaret stood abruptly. I'm going to bed before you two depress me into an early grave. Olivia, hot water's in the kettle if you want to wash. Jackson, stop brooding. She went inside. She worries, Jack said. She cares. That's different. Yeah, I suppose it is. He was quiet. Why Silverwood, really? What are you hoping to find? Olivia considered lying, considered the polite answer about duty and honoring Edward's memory. But sitting here in the dark with this man who understood loss, she told the truth. I don't know. I just know I can't go back to St. Louis and face everyone's pity. Can't be that woman whose husband died before we'd been married 5 years. Out here at least I'm nobody. Nobody knows me. Nobody's waiting for me to fall apart. You think falling apart is something you do in front of people? Jax's voice was gentle. Olivia, you've been falling apart since I found you. You're just doing it where nobody can see. Doesn't make it hurt less. The words hit like a fist, not cruel, just true. I don't know how to do this. Her voice cracked. Everyone expects me to be strong, to grieve properly, to move forward with dignity, and I don't know how. I don't know who I'm supposed to be now. Maybe you're supposed to be lost for a while. Maybe that's all right. That's not reassuring. No, but it's honest. He stood stretched. Get some sleep. Long ride ahead. He went inside, leaving her alone with the stars. Maybe you're supposed to be lost for a while. Olivia sat there long after the house went dark, wondering if following a stranger into the desert was the worst decision she'd ever made, or the first honest one. Morning came too early. Coffee and bacon smells pulled her from sleep. She dressed in the black dress, the only one she had, and braided her hair. In the kitchen, Margaret cooked while Jax read an old newspaper. Morning? Margaret was cheerful. Coffee's ready. Sit. Olivia sat. Jax nodded without looking up. It felt normal. Quiet morning routine with strangers. More normal than her last weeks with Edward, watching him waste away in that miserable Tucson boarding house. Sleep well. Margaret set a plate down. Better than I have in months. Good. Jax is going to Cottonwood Springs today for supplies. You're going with him. You need clothes. I have clothes. You have a funeral dress. Not the same thing. Margaret's voice was kind but firm. Out here you need practical. Something you can ride in. Something that won't kill you in this heat. I'm in mourning. You're in the desert. The desert doesn't care about mourning. Neither does the sun. She softened slightly. Olivia, I understand propriety, but out here survival matters more than appearances. Olivia looked down at the black fabric. Heavy, hot, restricting. She'd worn it every day for 3 months. Physical proof of her grief. Edward would want you to be practical, but that voice in her head sounded like an excuse. All right, she said. I'll get something else. Jax looked up, surprised. That was easier than I expected. I'm not unreasonable. Didn't say you were. Just most widows guard their mourning like armor. Maybe I'm tired of armor. The words surprised her, but once said she realized they were true. Margaret smiled. Good. Jax, get the wagon ready. Cottonwood Springs was bigger than Olivia expected. Proper town Main Street shops, church school building. People waved at Jax as they passed. Popular, Olivia observed. Small town, everyone knows everyone. He stopped the wagon at a general store. You need anything besides clothes? I don't think so. Inside, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes watched them enter. Jackson Xavier. Been a while. Who's your friend? Mrs. Olivia Green. Staying with us a few days. Needs traveling clothes. The woman's eyes lit up. Can I help, sugar? I can outfit you proper in 20 minutes. Come with me. She swept Olivia to the back before she could protest, already pulling fabric and ready-made items from shelves. Ruth Harper. I run this place with my husband. She held up a split riding skirt in brown wool. You're about 5'4" slim. This'll fit. I really don't need. Honey, Jax Xavier doesn't bring women to my store unless they need help, and that dress will cook you alive. She paused, something softening. You widowed? 3 months. I'm sorry. That's hard. She thrust the skirt and a cotton blouse into Olivia's hands. Try these. 20 minutes later, Olivia stared at herself in Ruth's mirror. The riding skirt was practical, allowed movement. The cream-colored blouse was cooler. Ruth had added a wide-brimmed hat, leather gloves, sturdy boots. Better, Ruth said with satisfaction. You look like someone who can handle herself. Olivia stared. She looked different. Younger. Less like a widow. More like someone with a future. The thought twisted her stomach with guilt. How much? Ruth named a price. More than Olivia could afford comfortably, but she paid without complaint. When she emerged, Jax was loading the wagon. He looked up. Did a double take. Good, he said finally. You look ready. For what? To see what's really waiting in Silverwood. He finished loading. We leave at dawn. Think you can handle a long ride? Olivia thought about the woman in the mirror, dressed for living instead of dying. I can handle it. For the first time in 3 months, she almost believed it. So, that night, Olivia lay awake in the dead child's room, listening to the house settle around her. Tomorrow she'd ride into the desert with a man she barely knew, chasing a dream that had never been hers toward land she'd never seen. Edward's voice whispered in her head, "You promised Livy. You promised you'd see it through." But another voice, quieter, newer, whispered back, "What if seeing it through means letting it go?" She turned her face into the pillow and waited for morning. Outside her window, a coyote called to the moon. Another answered, then another. A whole chorus of wild things singing to the darkness. Olivia listened until sleep took her, and dreamed of open roads with no map to follow. Dawn came cold and blue. Olivia woke before the sun, dressed in her new clothes, and braided her hair with fingers that shook only slightly. The riding skirt felt strange, liberating, and wrong at the same time. She caught her reflection in the small mirror and looked away quickly. In the kitchen, Jax was already packing supplies into saddlebags. He'd laid out jerky hardtack coffee in canteens, everything methodical, efficient. "Sleep?" he asked without looking up. "Some. That'll have to do." He finished packing and finally looked at her. His eyes swept over the new clothes, and he nodded once. "Good. You'll be comfortable riding." Margaret appeared with a cloth-wrapped bundle. "Biscuits and bacon. Don't let Jackson tell you hardtack is breakfast. It's perfectly good. It's perfectly awful, and you know it." She thrust the bundle into Olivia's hands. "There's also dried peaches, and if my brother tries to make you sleep on bare ground instead of using the bedroll I packed, you have my permission to hit him. I'm not an animal, Maggie. Could have fooled me." She turned to Olivia, and her expression shifted, something serious beneath the teasing. "You don't have to do this. The stage leaves today. You could be in Silverwood by tomorrow evening, civilized and proper." "I know. But you're going anyway." "I need to see it." Olivia's voice came out steadier than she felt. "The land. What Edward wanted. I need to see it with my own eyes before I can—" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "Before you can let it go?" Margaret asked quietly. The words hung there. Olivia couldn't answer. Margaret pulled her into a quick, fierce hug. "Be safe, both of you. And Jackson, bring her back in one piece, or I'll have your hide." "Yes, ma'am." They rode out as the sun broke over the eastern ridge, turning the sky from blue to gold to white hot in the space of an hour. Jax had given Olivia a calm mare named Rosie, steady and sure-footed. Olivia hadn't ridden in years. Edward had never owned horses, but her body remembered the rhythm. They rode in silence for the first hour. Olivia watched Jax's back the easy way he sat his horse, like they were one creature instead of two. Finally, she couldn't stand the quiet anymore. "How far today?" 20 miles if we push. There's a canyon with water about halfway. We'll camp there tonight. And tomorrow? Another 20, maybe 25. Depends on the terrain." He glanced back at her. "You holding up?" "I'm fine." "You will be until you're not. Tell me when you need to stop. Pride's a stupid reason to pass out." "I won't pass out." That's what they all say. But there was something almost fond in his voice. They rode on. The desert spread around them, endless red rock and scrub brush and sky so big it made Olivia feel like a speck of dust. Not insignificant, just small. Honestly small. "Can I ask you something?" she said after another hour. "Depends what it is." "Margaret said your wife and daughter died of fever. Was it—" She stopped, unsure if she was crossing a line. "Was it quick?" Jax's voice was steady. "No, took Emily 3 days. Took Caroline 5. She made me promise not to follow them into whatever came next. Made me swear I'd keep living." He was quiet for a moment. "Hardest promise I ever kept. Edward made me promise to see Silverwood, to make his dream real." "That's not the same thing." Isn't it? Olivia heard the edge in her voice. A promise to a dying person. What's the difference? The difference is, Caroline wanted me to live. Sounds like Edward wanted you to finish his unfinished business. Jax turned in his saddle to look at her directly. Those aren't the same thing at all. The words hit like a slap. Not because they were cruel, because they were true. He was my husband, Olivia said, but her voice shook. I know. And you loved him. But loving someone doesn't mean you owe them your whole future, especially when they're not here to live it with you. You don't understand. I understand better than you think. Jax faced forward again. First year after Caroline died, I barely left the ranch. Thought if I kept everything exactly like she'd left it, if I wore the same clothes and ate the same food and worked the same hours, somehow she'd still be there. Somehow I could keep her alive by not changing anything. What happened? Margaret showed up, took one look at the place and said, Caroline would be ashamed of you. Then she started throwing things away. I got so mad I didn't speak to her for a week. He smiled slightly. But she was right. I wasn't honoring Caroline's memory. I was building a tomb and climbing inside it. Olivia's throat felt tight. I'm not building a tomb. Aren't you black dress in the desert, chasing a dead man's dream? Sounds like a tomb to me. I'm not wearing the black dress anymore. No, you're not. He said it gentle, like it mattered. They rode in silence after that, but it felt different now, less awkward, more companionable. Like they'd crossed some invisible line and come out the other side still standing. Around noon, Jax called a halt near a cluster of rocks that provided minimal shade. They dismounted and Olivia's legs screamed. She tried not to show it, but Jax noticed anyway. Stretch. Walk around. You'll stiffen up if you just sit. She obeyed, walking in small circles while he tended the horses. Margaret's biscuits were still warm, the bacon salty and perfect. They ate standing up, passing a canteen back and forth. How much farther to the canyon? Olivia asked. 4 hours. Maybe 5. You need a longer rest. No, I'm fine. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Jack studied her for a moment, then shook his head. You're stubborn. Is that a criticism? No, just an observation. He took a final drink and stoppered the canteen. Stubborn keeps you alive out here, but it can also kill you if you're not careful. There's a difference between strong and stupid. Which one am I? Haven't decided yet. They mounted again and rode through the hottest part of the day. Sweat soaked through Olivia's blouse. The hat helped, but her face still burned. She focused on the rhythm of the horse beneath her, the creak of leather, the sound of Jax's horse ahead. 1 hour, then another. The sun moved across the sky like it was being pulled on a string. Tell me about teaching, Jax said suddenly. Olivia blinked, pulled from her heat-dazed thoughts. What? Margaret said you used to teach. Before Edward. Oh. Yes, in St. Louis. I taught at a girls' school. Reading, writing, basic arithmetic. Did you like it? I loved it. The words came out before she could stop them. I loved watching them learn. That moment when something clicks and their whole face lights up. It felt... She stopped, surprised by the ache in her chest. It felt important. Why'd you stop? Edward didn't think it was appropriate. He wanted a wife who stayed home, managed the house. He said teaching was for spinsters, not married women. She heard the bitterness in her voice. I told myself it didn't matter, that being his wife was enough. Was it? I don't know. I never got the chance to find out. Olivia swallowed hard. He got sick 6 months after we married. After that, everything was about doctors and treatments and trying to keep him alive. There wasn't room for anything else. That's not a marriage, Jack said quietly. That's a vigil. It was all I had. Maybe, but it doesn't have to be all you'll ever have. The words settled over her like a weight, or maybe a promise. She wasn't sure which. The canyon appeared as the sun started its descent, a slash in the earth walls rising red and gold on either side. A thin stream ran through the bottom, barely more than a trickle, but clear and cold. Trees grew along the water, actual trees, cottonwoods with leaves that whispered in the evening breeze. "We'll camp here," Jack said, dismounting. "Water the horses first, then we'll set up." Olivia slid from her saddle and her legs nearly buckled. Everything hurt her back, her thighs, muscles she'd forgotten she had. She grabbed the saddle horn to steady herself. Jax appeared at her elbow. "First day's always the worst. Tomorrow you'll be stiff, but it gets easier after that." "How much easier?" "I'd be lying if I said much." But he smiled. "Come on, help me with the horses." He showed her how to unsaddle, how to check for sores or stones in the hooves, how to hobble them so they wouldn't wander, but could still graze. His hands were patient, and he didn't make her feel stupid for not knowing. "Caroline taught you this?" she asked. "Some. Most I learned the hard way, making mistakes and fixing them." He straightened, stretching his back. "Gather firewood while there's still light. I'll get water and set up camp." They worked in easy silence as the sky shifted from blue to purple to deep indigo. Jax built a fire with practiced efficiency, while Olivia arranged their bedrolls a respectful distance apart. He produced a small pot and coffee from his pack, set it to boil, then pulled out more of Margaret's supplies. "Your sister packed enough food for a week," Olivia observed. "Maggie always overpacks. Thinks I'll starve if she's not watching." He unwrapped more biscuits, some dried beef, and an apple that he cut in half with his knife. "Here." They ate, watching the fire. The canyon walls trapped the warmth, and the air smelled like smoke and sage, and something indefinably desert. Stars began to appear overhead, more stars than Olivia had ever seen, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled salt. "It's beautiful," she said without thinking. "Yeah, it is." Jax poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "City girl like you probably never saw a sky like this." "Never." She accepted the cup gratefully. "In St. Louis, you could barely see stars at all. Too many lights, too much smoke. You miss it." "I don't know what I miss anymore." She sipped the coffee, strong, bitter, perfect. "Everything feels far away, like it happened to someone else." That's grief. Makes everything feel unreal for a while. "How long does it last?" "As long as it needs to." He stared into the fire. "But eventually, you wake up one morning and realize you slept through the night without dreaming about them. And then you feel guilty for not dreaming. And then you feel tired of feeling guilty. And then one day you just keep living. Not because you're over it, but because staying stuck hurts worse than moving forward." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know how to move forward." "Nobody does. You just do it anyway." They sat in silence after that, watching the fire burn down to coals. Somewhere in the darkness, a nightbird called. Another answered. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly. "For bringing me. For," she gestured vaguely, "all of this." "You don't have to thank me." "I do, though. You barely know me and you're—" She stopped, searching for words. "You're treating me like I matter." Jax looked at her, then really looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "You do matter," he said. "Don't let grief tell you different." The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric. Then Jax cleared his throat and stood. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's another long day." He moved to his bedroll on the other side of the fire. Olivia lay down in hers, wrapped in Margaret's blanket, staring up at the impossible stars. She could hear Jax's breathing across the fire, slow, steady, alive. The sound was strangely comforting. She wasn't alone out here in the darkness. Someone was watching, listening, keeping the night at bay. "You matter," he'd said. Olivia closed her eyes and held those words close like a candle against the dark. She woke once in the night to the sound of coyotes singing. Jax was sitting up by the fire, feeding it new wood, silhouetted against the flames. He looked over when she stirred. "Go back to sleep," he said softly. I've got watch. Watch for what? Nothing. Everything. Habit. He smiled slightly. Sleep, Olivia. She did, and this time she dreamed of stars. Morning came with birdsong and the smell of coffee. Olivia woke stiff and sore, every muscle protesting. Jax was already up, fire rebuilt, horses saddled. How do you feel? He asked. Like I got trampled. That's about right. Coffee helps. So does moving. He handed her a cup. We need to cover ground today. The land gets rougher from here. They ate quickly, more biscuits, some jerky, and were mounted by the time the sun cleared the canyon rim. Olivia's body screamed for the first hour, then settled into a dull, persistent ache. She focused on breathing, on staying mounted, on not complaining. You're doing good, Jax said around midday. Better than I expected. Low expectations. Honest ones. Most city folks don't make it this far without whining. I'm not most city folks. No. He said it thoughtful, like he was figuring something out. No, you're not. The landscape changed as they rode fewer cacti, more rock-deep arroyos cut into the earth like scars. The heat was different here, drier, meaner. Olivia drained her canteen, and Jax refilled it from his without comment. How much farther? She asked. Silverwood. We'll reach it tomorrow afternoon if we make good time. Your land's another hour beyond the town. What's the town like? Jax was quiet for too long. You'll see for yourself soon enough. Something in his voice made her nervous. Jax. Let's stop here. Horses need rest. They were at the edge of a mesa overlooking miles of empty desert. Wind whipped across the flat stone, hot and relentless. Jax dismounted, and Olivia followed, grateful to be off the horse. Sit, he said. Drink. We'll rest 20 minutes. Olivia sat on a boulder and stared at the horizon. Somewhere out there was Silverwood. Edward's dream. Her inheritance. The place she'd promised to see, to honor, to make real. What if it's not what I hoped? She asked suddenly. Jax settled onto a rock nearby. What did you hope? I don't know. Something. Proof that his dream meant something. That his death wasn't... She stopped, throat tight. Wasn't just waste. Death is always waste, Jax said quietly. The living are the ones who decide what comes after. You can't make Edward's death meaningful, but you can make your life meaningful. That's not the same thing. You sound like you've thought about this. 4 years is a long time to think. He took off his hat, wiped sweat from his forehead. After Caroline and Emily died, I told myself if I could just keep the ranch running, if I could just maintain what we'd built together, then their deaths would mean something. Like I was preserving their legacy. And I was wrong. The ranch wasn't their legacy, I was. The way I chose to keep living, that was what mattered. Not the land, not the house. Me. What I did next. He looked at her directly. Your husband bought land. But you're not land, Olivia. You're a person, and people get to choose. Choose what? Everything. Who they are, where they go, what they do with whatever time they have left. He stood, dusting off his pants. Come on, we should keep moving. They rode through the hottest part of the day, and Olivia turned his words over in her mind. You get to choose. It sounded so simple, so impossible. Evening found them at another camping spot, less dramatic than the canyon, just a flat space with some scrub for the horses and rocks for shelter from the wind. They made camp quickly now, working together without needing to speak. Jax built the fire while Olivia tended the horses. She was getting better at it, more confident. Dinner was simple. The last of Margaret's biscuits. Jerky coffee. They ate, watching the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red and purple that didn't seem real. Tomorrow, Olivia said. We'll reach Silverwood tomorrow. Yeah. I'm scared. The admission came out before she could stop it. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. What if... She stopped, started again. What if I see it and realize Edward's whole dream was a lie? What if there's nothing there worth dying for? Then you'll know, and you can decide what comes next based on truth instead of fantasy. Jax poked at the fire with a stick. Olivia, there's no shame in letting go of someone else's dream, even if that someone was your husband. It feels like betrayal. I know, but holding on when you should let go, that's betrayal too. Betrayal of yourself. She wanted to argue, wanted to defend Edward, defend the promise she'd made, defend the last 3 months of walking toward this moment. But sitting here in the desert with this man who'd lost everything and somehow kept living, she couldn't find the words. "Tell me about Caroline," she said instead. "What was she like?" Jax smiled, real smile, not the sad one. Stubborn, loud. She laughed at her own jokes before anyone else could. Burned dinner more nights than she got it right. Emily got her temper used to stomp her foot when she was mad, this tiny little thing shaking with rage. His voice softened. Caroline sang while she worked. Terrible voice, didn't care. Said life was too short to be quiet. She sounds wonderful. She was, but she was also human. We fought sometimes. She drove me crazy more than once. I'm not sitting here mourning a saint. I'm mourning a woman I loved, flaws and all. He looked at Olivia. That's the difference, I think. You're mourning what Edward could have been. I mourned what Caroline was. The words cut clean and true. Olivia felt them settle in her chest like stones. I didn't love Edward enough, she whispered. That's the real truth. I married him because I was 23 and tired of living with my parents, and he was kind and wanted me. But I didn't love him the way I should have, and now he's dead, and I can't fix it. You can't fix it, Jax agreed. But you can forgive yourself for it. How? By stopping punishing yourself. By letting yourself live. He stood stretched. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's the last day. Olivia lay in her bedroll staring at the stars, and for the first time in 3 months, she let herself think it. Maybe I don't want to keep Edward's promise. Maybe I want something else entirely. The thought should have felt like betrayal. Instead, it felt like breathing. She woke to gray dawn and Jax shaking her shoulder gently. We need to move. Storm's coming. Olivia sat up confused. The sky looked clear, but Jax was already breaking camp with practiced urgency. I don't see. Trust me. I've lived here 8 years. Storm's coming. He was rolling bedrolls, dousing the fire, saddling horses. We need to reach Silverwood before it hits. They rode hard. Olivia's body protested, but she ignored it, focused on keeping pace with Jax. The sky stayed clear for 2 hours. Then clouds appeared on the horizon, dark, rolling wrong. Flash flood, Olivia called over the wind. Maybe, or just rain. Either way, we don't want to be caught in open country. He urged his horse faster. Come on. They pushed the horses to the edge of safety. The clouds raced toward them, eating the blue sky. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Olivia's mare tossed her head nervously. There. Jax pointed. That's Silverwood. Olivia looked. Her heart sank. Silverwood wasn't a town. It was barely a settlement, maybe 15 structures scattered across empty land, most of them more shack than building. No church, no school, nothing that suggested permanence or hope or future. That's it, she whispered. That's it. Jax's voice was gentle. Come on, your land's past the town. We can still make it before the storm. They rode through Silverwood without stopping. A few people watched from doorways, but no one called out. The place felt abandoned, even with people in it. Past the town, the land opened up flat, dry, covered in scrub brush and rocks. Jax pulled up at a wooden stake driven into the ground. This is it, he said. 20 acres. Starts here, runs east to that outcropping, north to that stand of mesquite, south to the dry wash. Olivia dismounted, walked to the stake, looked at the land Edward had bought, the dream he'd died for. It was nothing. Empty, dry, useless. Thunder cracked overhead. The first drops of rain hit her face. Olivia, Jax started. It's nothing. Her voice sounded far away. He died for nothing. We need to find shelter. There's nothing here. She turned to look at Jax, and she was laughing, crying she couldn't tell which. 20 acres of dust and dreams and absolutely nothing. The sky opened up. Rain poured down in sheets, cold and hard. Jax grabbed her arm. Abandoned line shack. Over there. Move. They ran, leading the horses. The shack was barely standing, 3 walls and half a roof, but it was shelter. Jax pulled the horses inside with them, and they stood there dripping and breathing hard while the storm raged outside. I'm sorry, Jax said finally. Olivia started laughing. Really laughing. The sound echoed in the small space, half hysterical. Stop apologizing, you didn't do this. She wiped rain from her face. Edward did this. He bought 20 acres of nothing and called it a dream. And I... She stopped, the laughter dying. I walked across the desert to honor it. What does that make me? Human, Jax said quietly. It makes you human. The rain hammered the roof. Water leaked through gaps, but they were mostly dry. Olivia sank down against the wall, exhausted. Now what? She whispered. Jax sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Now you decide. This was Edward's dream. What's yours? Olivia looked out at the rain, the empty land, the nothing she'd traveled so far to see. And somewhere in the storm and the ruins, something in her chest finally cracked open. I don't know, she said, but it's not this. The rain didn't stop for 3 hours. They sat in the half-ruined line shack while water poured through the gaps in the roof and pooled on the dirt floor. The horses stood patient and dripping occasionally, shaking their heads and sending spray everywhere. Olivia watched the water collect and drain through cracks in the foundation, taking soil with it, and thought about erosion. About how things wear away slowly until there's nothing left but the shape of what used to be there. You're quiet, Jax said. I'm thinking. About how I spent 3 months walking toward nothing. She pulled her knees to her chest. About how Edward spent our last real money on this. About how he died believing it mattered. Maybe it did matter, to him. But not to me. She said it flat, empty. That's the truth, isn't it? It mattered to him, and I'm just the one left holding it. Jax shifted beside her. What do you want to do? I don't know. Go back to your ranch, I suppose. Then figure out, she gestured vaguely. Whatever comes next. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. The rain finally slowed to a drizzle, then stopped altogether. Jax stood, stretched, looked outside at the mud and standing water. We should head back before dark. Ground's going to be a mess, but we can make it if we're careful. He started checking the horses' hooves for packed mud. Unless you want to stay in Silverwood tonight. Olivia looked out at the settlement, barely visible through the mist. 15 broken buildings and a graveyard of dreams. No, she said. Let's go home. The word slipped out before she could stop it. Home. Like his ranch was hers. Like she belonged there. If Jax noticed, he didn't comment. Just nodded and finished with the horses. The ride back was slow and miserable. The horses picked their way carefully through mud and puddles. Water had carved new channels in the earth, turning familiar paths into obstacles. Olivia's wet clothes chafed and her body ached, but she barely noticed. Her mind was somewhere else, turning over and over the same thought: I came all this way for nothing. Except that wasn't quite true. She'd come all this way and found something. Just not what she'd expected. They didn't make it back to the ranch that night. The going was too slow, the horses too tired. As the sun set, Jax called a halt near a cluster of rocks. We'll camp here. Should reach home by noon tomorrow. There was that word again. Home. They made camp in silence. Everything was damp, the wood, the ground, their clothes. Jax managed to get a fire started, but it smoked and sputtered. They ate jerky and the last apple, passing it back and forth without talking. Finally, Olivia couldn't stand the quiet anymore. Say something. Like what? Anything. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me I'm not a terrible person for being relieved. Jax looked at her across the struggling fire. Relieved. That it was nothing. That there's no farmhouse to build, no crops to plant, no dream to fulfill. That I can just... She stopped, throat tight. That I can just let it go, and not feel guilty about it. You can let it go, Jax said quietly. But you're going to feel guilty anyway. That's how grief works. You feel guilty for everything, for being alive, for being relieved, for moving on, for not moving on fast enough. The guilt doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you're human. How long until it stops? I don't know. I'll tell you when it happens. Olivia laughed despite herself. That's not comforting. No, but it's honest. He added another piece of wood to the fire. What are you going to do with the land? Sell it, I suppose, if anyone's fool enough to buy it. And then, I don't know, go back to St. Louis maybe, try to find another teaching position, start over. That what you want? Olivia opened her mouth to say yes, closed it again. The truth was, she didn't know what she wanted. For 3 months, she'd been so focused on getting to Silverwood, on keeping Edward's promise, that she hadn't thought about what came after. Now, after was here, and she felt blank. Empty. Like someone had pulled out all her insides and left just the shell. I want to stop feeling like this, she said finally. Like I'm drowning and can't find the surface. That's grief too, feeling like you can't breathe. When does it get better? Jax was quiet for a long moment. It doesn't get better. You just get stronger. Learn to hold your breath longer. He looked at her. But you have to want to keep swimming. Have to want to reach the surface. Some people just give up. Let themselves sink. Is that what you did after Caroline and Emily? For a while, yeah. I let myself sink. Thought about letting myself drown. His voice was matter-of-fact, no drama. Then Maggie showed up and dragged me back up. Literally dragged me, showed up at the ranch, threw cold water on me, and told me I could either start living or get out of her way so she could use the house for something useful. That sounds like Margaret. Yeah, she's never been one for gentle approaches. He smiled slightly. But she was right. I was taking up space that could have been used for living. Just existing isn't the same as being alive. What's the difference? Choice. Being alive means choosing. Existing is just reacting. Letting things happen to you instead of deciding what happens next. Olivia stared into the fire. I don't know how to choose. I've spent so long doing what other people wanted. What my parents wanted, what Edward wanted, what I thought I was supposed to want. I don't even know what I want anymore. Then maybe that's what you figure out next. How? By trying things. By paying attention to what makes you feel alive instead of just not dead. He shrugged. It's not complicated, just hard. They sat in silence after that. The fire burned down to coals, and Olivia felt exhaustion pulling at her. But her mind wouldn't settle. Jax. Yeah. Thank you. For taking me. For... She gestured vaguely. For not lying about what I'd find. I didn't know what you'd find. I just knew you needed to see it yourself. Still, thank you. He nodded, and something in his expression made her chest feel warm despite the damp cold. She slept fitfully that night, half waking to check the fire, to listen to the horses, to make sure Jax was still there across from her. Each time she woke, he was a solid presence in the darkness keeping watch. Morning came gray and cold. They broke camp quickly and rode through mud that sucked at the horses' hooves. Neither of them spoke much. Olivia's mind was already racing ahead to the ranch, to Margaret's sharp eyes and sharper questions, to whatever came next. They reached the ranch just after noon, like Jax had predicted. Margaret came out onto the porch, took one look at them both, mud-splattered and exhausted, and put her hands on her hips. Well, It's nothing, Olivia said, dismounting. Her legs shook. 20 acres of dust and rocks. No water, no trees, nothing. I see. Margaret's voice was carefully neutral. And I'm done. I'm selling it if I can. If I can't. Olivia shrugged. Then I'll walk away and let whoever wants it have it. Something shifted in Margaret's expression. Satisfaction maybe, or approval. Good. Now get inside before you both catch your death. I've got stew on and hot water for washing. Move. The next 2 hours were a blur of hot water and clean clothes and food that actually tasted like something. Olivia scrubbed the mud from her skin and changed into one of Margaret's dresses, too big in the shoulders, too short in the hem, but clean and dry, and she'd never been more grateful for anything. When she came back out to the kitchen, Margaret had bowls of stew waiting. Eat, she commanded. Both of you. Then sleep. You both look like death. Yes, ma'am, Jack said, but there was affection in his voice. Olivia ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her body was exhausted, but her mind wouldn't stop circling. Now what? She kept hearing the question echo in her head. Now what? Now what? Now what? Stop it, Margaret said. Olivia looked up, startled. Stop what? Whatever you're doing in your head, that spiral of panic I can see on your face. Margaret sat down across from her. You look like someone who just realized they're standing at a crossroads with no map. That's exactly how I feel. Good. That means you're paying attention. Margaret pushed the bread basket toward her. Eat more. You need your strength for thinking clearly. I can't think clearly. Every time I try, my mind just... Olivia made a gesture like an explosion. There's too much, too many questions. Then start with the small ones. Do you want to go back to St. Louis? I don't know. That's a no then. When people want something, they know. When they don't know, it means no. Margaret looked at her steadily. Do you want to try to make something of that land? No. The answer came fast, certain. Definitely not. See? You do know some things. Keep going. Do you want to keep wearing black and mourning a man who bought worthless land and died before he could admit his mistake? The question was harsh, but not unkind. Olivia felt something in her chest crack open. No, she whispered. I'm tired of mourning. I'm tired of feeling guilty for being alive when he's not. I'm tired of... Her voice broke. I'm tired of being Edward's widow instead of just Olivia. Then stop. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Not easy, but simple. Margaret reached across the table and took Olivia's hand. Honey, grief is real and valid, and it takes as long as it takes. But you can grieve and still live. You can honor what was without sacrificing what could be. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Everyone will think I'm terrible. Moving on so fast. Everyone isn't living your life. You are. Margaret squeezed her hand once and let go. And anyone who judges you for choosing to keep living can go straight to hell with my compliments. Jack snorted into his coffee. Maggie. Don't Maggie me. You know I'm right. I didn't say you weren't. Margaret stood gathering bowls. Both of you get some rest. We'll figure out next steps later. Right now, sleep. Olivia didn't argue. She went to the small bedroom, Emily's room, she reminded herself with a pang, and lay down on the narrow bed. Sleep pulled her under like a tide. She woke to voices again. But this time they were louder, more animated. She lay still, listening. She could stay. Margaret. Firm and certain. Stay here, Maggie, that's practical. She needs time to figure things out. We have space. The town needs a teacher. It's perfect. Nothing about this is perfect. She's a widow who just buried her husband's dream. She needs, I don't know, time, space, not us making decisions for her. I'm not making decisions for her. I'm offering options. A pause. Jackson, when's the last time you saw her smile? Really smile? Not that sad. Ghost of a smile she's been wearing like armor. This morning, when she was talking about teaching. Exactly. So why would we send her back to St. Louis where she's got nothing and nobody when she could stay here and maybe build something real? Because she's not ours to keep, Maggie. She's not a lost kitten. No, she's a lost woman. And we both know what that's like. Silence. Long and heavy. What if she says yes? Jax's voice was so quiet, Olivia barely heard it. What if she stays and then decides to leave anyway? What if you're terrified because you're starting to care about her, and you don't want to lose someone else? The words hung in the air. Olivia held her breath. That's not... Jax stopped, started again. I'm not... You are. And that's okay. It's been 4 years, Jackson. You're allowed to feel things for someone who isn't Caroline. She wouldn't want you frozen forever. I know what Caroline would want, but that doesn't make it less complicated. Life is complicated. Doesn't mean you should run from it. Footsteps. A door closing. Olivia lay in the dark, her heart pounding. Jax was starting to care about her. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something flutter in her chest. Something that might have been hope or fear, or both tangled together. She stayed in bed until her heartbeat settled, then rose and splashed water on her face. In the mirror, she looked different. Less haunted, more present. The woman staring back at her was still figuring things out, still lost in some ways, but there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Determination, maybe, or possibility. She found Margaret in the kitchen, kneading bread with fierce concentration. You're awake. Good. Sit. I need to talk to you. Olivia sat bracing herself. Margaret didn't stop kneading. The town council meets tomorrow evening. They're discussing the school situation. Cottonwood Springs has been without a teacher for 6 months now. The last one quit, said the pay was too low and the kids too wild. She shaped the dough with practiced hands. I told them I might know someone interested in the position. Margaret, before you say anything, hear me out. The pay isn't great, room and board plus $30 a month. But you'd have your own house, small but clean, right above the schoolroom. 23 children ages 6 to 14. Mostly ranch kids, a few from town. Good kids just need someone who cares enough to teach them properly. I can't. Can't what? Teach? You said yourself you loved it. Can't stay. Why not? You've got nothing waiting for you in St. Louis except pity and bad memories. Can't accept help. Margaret finally looked up. Olivia, I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job. The town needs a teacher. You need a purpose. It's practical, not pity. What if I'm not ready? Nobody's ever ready. You just do it anyway and figure it out as you go. She covered the dough with a cloth. The council wants to meet you tomorrow. Just meet them. Hear what they have to say. Then decide. But decide based on what you want, not what you think Edward would have wanted, or what you think you're supposed to do. Choose for yourself. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. What if I choose wrong? Then you choose again. That's the thing about choices, you get to make more than one. Margaret wiped flour from her hands. Now I'm going to be direct because that's who I am. You've spent 3 months walking toward a dead man's dream. Don't spend the rest of your life running from your own. The words hit like a physical blow, clean and true and impossible to argue with. I'll meet them, Olivia heard herself say. The council. I'll meet them tomorrow. Good. Now help me with dinner. Jax will be back from checking the fence line soon, and he eats like a horse. They worked in comfortable silence, chopping vegetables and setting the table. When Jax came in dusty and tired, Margaret served roasted chicken and potatoes and green beans that tasted like the best meal Olivia had ever eaten. Council's meeting tomorrow, Margaret announced over coffee. Olivia's going to talk to them about the teaching position. Jax's eyes flicked to Olivia. Yeah. Olivia said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. I'm going to hear what they have to say. Something shifted in Jax's expression. Relief maybe, or something warmer. Good. Town's been needing a real teacher for a while. What about you? Olivia asked before she could stop herself. What do you think about me staying? The question hung between them. Margaret suddenly became very interested in her coffee. Jax met Olivia's eyes directly. I think you should do whatever makes you feel alive instead of just not dead. If that's teaching here, then stay. If that's going back to St. Louis, then go. But choose based on what you want, not what you think you owe anyone. Everyone keeps telling me that, Olivia said. Choose what I want. But what if I don't know what I want? Then try something and see how it feels. If it doesn't fit, try something else. He shrugged. Life's not a test you can fail, Olivia. It's just life. You make choices, see what happens, adjust accordingly. That's terrifying. Yep, but it's also the only way forward. That night, Olivia lay awake in Emily's room and thought about choices. About Edward's choice to buy worthless land, her choice to honor his dream, Jax's choice to keep living after his family died, Margaret's choice to offer her a lifeline. About all the small choices that added up to a life, and how maybe she'd been letting other people's choices dictate her own for too long. She thought about teaching, about the moment when a child's face lit up with understanding, about the weight of a book in her hands, and the smell of chalk, and the satisfaction of watching someone learn to read. She'd loved it once. Could she love it again? And underneath all of that quieter but persistent, she thought about the way Jax looked at her sometimes, like she was a person, not a widow. Like she mattered in present tense, not just past. The thought made her chest feel tight and warm and terrified all at once. She was starting to care about him too. The realization should have felt like betrayal. She'd only been widowed 3 months. It was too soon. What would people think? But it didn't. It felt like waking up, like breaking the surface and finally being able to breathe. That scared her more than anything else. Morning came with birdsong and the smell of coffee, and Margaret humming in the kitchen. Olivia dressed carefully in her cream-colored blouse and brown skirt, the practical clothes that had carried her through the desert. She braided her hair and looked at herself in the mirror. A teacher, she thought. I could be a teacher again. The idea didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like coming home to herself. The town council meeting was held in the back room of the general store. Ruth Harper was there along with 4 men. Olivia didn't know the mayor, a rancher, the owner of the boarding house, and a man Jax introduced as the town doctor. Mrs. Green. The mayor was 50-ish, weathered with sharp eyes. We understand you have teaching experience. I taught for 3 years at a girls' school in St. Louis. Reading, writing, arithmetic, basic history, and geography. And you're interested in the position here. Olivia took a breath. Thought about Edward's land, about empty promises, about 20 acres of nothing. Thought about Jax asking her what made her feel alive. Yes, she said. I am. Why? The rancher leaned forward. No offense, ma'am, but you're a widow fresh from the city. These are ranch kids. Wild, rough around the edges. Half of them barely speak English. What makes you think you can handle them? Because I don't see children as problems to handle, Olivia said, and her voice was stronger than she expected. I see them as people who deserve an education, regardless of how rough around the edges they are. And if they barely speak English, then I'll teach them English along with everything else. That's what a teacher does. Silence. The council members exchanged glances. The pay is $30 a month, the mayor said. Room and board included, you'd live above the schoolroom. It's not much. It's enough, Olivia said, and meant it. More glances. Ruth Harper smiled. When can you start? The mayor asked. Olivia's heart jumped. You're offering me the position. Unless you're having second thoughts. No, no second thoughts. She felt something like joy flutter in her chest. I can start Monday if that works. Monday's fine. Ruth, can you help Mrs. Green get settled in the schoolhouse? Already planned on it, Ruth said. Come on, honey. Let's go see your new home." The schoolhouse was small but solid, one room with windows on three sides, a pot-bellied stove in the corner, and rows of mismatched desks. Upstairs was a single room with a bed, a small stove, a table, and two chairs and windows that looked out over the town. "It's perfect," Olivia said, and realized she meant it. "Needs cleaning," Ruth said practically, "and fresh linens, but it's sound. Better than what the last teacher had in Denver, from what I hear." They spent the afternoon cleaning and organizing. Margaret appeared with supplies, soap linens, a new broom, curtains for the windows. Other women from town stopped by with offerings, a rug, a lamp, dishes, a rocking chair. "Welcome to Cottonwood Springs," Ruth said as the sun set. "Monday morning you'll have 23 children and their parents all watching to see if the new teacher's worth keeping. No pressure." "None at all," Olivia said, but she was smiling. That night she had dinner with Jax and Margaret one last time before moving into the schoolhouse. The meal was quiet, comfortable. When Margaret went to bed early, Olivia found herself alone with Jax on the porch, watching the stars come out. "You're really doing this," he said. "I'm really doing this." She felt breathless with the enormity of it. "I'm staying, teaching, starting over." "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Exciting. Right." She looked at him. "Thank you. For taking me to Silverwood. For showing me—" She stopped, searching for words. "Showing you what? That I could choose differently. That Edward's dream didn't have to be mine. That I could—" She swallowed hard. "That I could start living again instead of just existing." Jax was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You know, when I found you in the desert, I thought I was just helping another lost traveler. Didn't expect—" He stopped. "Didn't expect what?" "Didn't expect you." He looked at her directly, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "Didn't expect to care what happened next." The words hung between them, fragile and enormous. "Jax, it's too soon. I know that. You've only been widowed 3 months. I've got no right to feel—" He stopped, shook his head. "I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know that you matter to me, and I'm glad you're staying." Olivia's chest felt too full. "I'm glad I'm staying too." They sat in silence after that, but it was different now, charged with possibility, with things unsaid but acknowledged. When Olivia finally stood to go, Jax walked her to the door. "Monday morning," he said. "You'll do great." "How do you know?" "Because you're choosing it. That makes all the difference." Olivia walked back to town under a sky full of stars, and for the first time in 3 months, maybe longer, she felt like she was walking towards something instead of away from it. Monday morning came too fast, and not fast enough. Olivia woke before dawn in the small room above the schoolhouse, heart pounding. She dressed carefully in her cream blouse and brown skirt, braided her hair, stared at her reflection in the small mirror Ruth had brought over. The woman looking back at her wasn't Edward's widow anymore. Wasn't the lost traveler Jax had found dying in the desert. She was Olivia Green's schoolteacher. The thought made her hands shake. She went downstairs and started a fire in the pot-bellied stove, even though it wasn't cold. Needed something to do with her hands. She arranged the desks, 23 of them, all different sizes, into neat rows. Wrote her name on the blackboard in careful letters, Mrs. Olivia Green. Then erased it and wrote Miss Green instead. Simpler. Less explanations. The first child arrived at 7:30, a girl maybe 8 with blonde braids and suspicious eyes. "You the new teacher?" she asked from the doorway. "I am. What's your name?" "Sarah Miller. My ma says you're from the city and won't last a week." Olivia felt something shift in her chest. Not anger, but determination. "Your mother might be right. Or she might be wrong. We'll find out together, won't we?" Sarah considered this. "I guess so." She came inside, chose a desk near the front, sat down with her hands folded. "I can already read some." "That's wonderful." What's your favorite thing to read? Stories about horses. I'll see what I can find for you. By 8 o'clock, all 23 children had arrived. They ranged from 6 to 14, all shapes and sizes, watching her with expressions that ranged from curious to hostile to bored. Olivia stood at the front of the room and felt her heart hammering against her ribs. "Good morning," she said. "My name is Miss Green. I'm going to be your teacher." "For how long?" A boy in the back, maybe 12 arms crossed. "Last one quit after 3 months." "I don't plan on quitting." "That's what the last one said too." "Then I suppose you'll just have to wait and see if I'm telling the truth." She met his eyes steadily. "What's your name?" "Tom Reeves." "Well, Tom Reeves, I'm glad you're here. Now before we start, I need to know what you've all been learning. So we're going to spend this morning figuring out where everyone is. Reading, writing, arithmetic. No judgment, no shame. I just need to know where to start." The morning was chaos. Half the children could barely write their names. The other half had been taught so poorly they had more bad habits than good ones. 2 of the younger ones didn't speak English as a first language, one Spanish one, something Olivia didn't recognize. By noon, her head was pounding and her carefully planned lessons were in shambles. But the children were trying. That was something. She sent them home for lunch and sat at her desk with her head in her hands. 23 children, all at different levels, all needing different things. How was she supposed to knock? Margaret stood in the doorway with a basket. "Brought you lunch? Figured you might forget to eat." "You figured right." Olivia accepted the basket gratefully. Bread, cheese, and apple. "It's a disaster. I'm completely unprepared. They're all over the place and I don't know how to breathe," Margaret said firmly. "First day is always chaos. Give it time." "What if I can't do this?" "Then you'll figure something else out. But you won't know until you try." Margaret sat on the edge of a desk. "How many of them can read?" "Maybe half. And even then barely." "So you teach them to read. Start simple. Build from there." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple, just not easy." Margaret stood. "Eat your lunch. They'll be back soon. And Olivia. Stop looking for reasons to fail. Start looking for reasons to succeed." The afternoon was marginally better. Olivia split them into groups by ability and gave each group different work. The older ones who could read got books to practice with. The younger ones got slates and chalk to practice letters. The ones in the middle got simple sentences to copy. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. By 3 o'clock when she dismissed them, she was exhausted, but also satisfied. They'd learned something today. Not much, but something. Tom Reeves lingered as the others filed out. "Yeah," Olivia said. "You really not gonna quit?" "I really am not." He studied her for a long moment. "Okay. See you tomorrow then." "See you tomorrow, Tom." That evening, Ruth Harper stopped by with another basket, this one containing dinner. "Council sent me to check on you," she said, handing it over. "See if you're having second thoughts." "I'm not." "Good, because Mayor Blackwell bet $20 you'd quit by the end of the week, and I bet 20 you'd last the month. Don't make me lose my money." "I'll do my best." Ruth laughed. "You'll do fine. These kids need someone who gives a damn. You clearly do. That's more than the last 3 teachers combined." She started to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Jax Xavier was asking about you at the general store this afternoon. Wanted to know how your first day went. Thought you should know." She left before Olivia could respond. But the knowledge that Jax had been thinking about her, asking about her, made something warm bloom in her chest. The first week was brutal. Olivia fell into bed each night too exhausted to think, woke each morning with her mind already racing through lesson plans. She taught reading to the ones who couldn't, corrected the bad habits in the ones who could, started teaching basic arithmetic to everyone, because apparently the previous teacher had skipped math entirely. On Friday afternoon, Tom Reeves raised his hand. "Miss Green." "Yes, Tom." This is the first time I've understood math in my whole life. Something in Olivia's chest cracked open. I'm glad, Tom. That evening, she walked out to Jax's ranch. She told herself it was to thank Margaret for all the meals, but that was only partly true. She wanted to see Jax, wanted to tell him she'd survived the week. She didn't know what she wanted exactly, but she knew it had something to do with the way he'd looked at her that night on the porch. Margaret answered the door with flour on her hands and a knowing look in her eyes. He's in the barn, she said without preamble. I don't know what you're... Yes, you do? Go on, dinner's in an hour. Olivia found Jax mucking out stalls, which should have been unappealing, but somehow wasn't. He looked up when she entered, surprised and pleased. Olivia, thought you'd be too tired for socializing. I am, but I wanted to tell you I survived the week. Never doubted you would. He leaned on the pitchfork studying her. How does it feel? Exhausting. Overwhelming. Right. She smiled. Really right. Good. He said it quiet, warm. I'm glad. They stood there looking at each other, and Olivia felt the air between them charged with something unspoken. Finally, she cleared her throat. Margaret said dinner's in an hour. She always says that. Usually means 45 minutes. He set the pitchfork aside. Walk with me. I need to check the fence line before dark. They walked the perimeter of his property as the sun sank toward the horizon. Jax pointed out repairs he'd made, plans he had for expanding the corral, a new well he wanted to dig. Olivia listened and watched the way his hands moved when he talked, the way his eyes lit up discussing something he cared about. You love it, she said. The ranch. The work. Yeah. Didn't think I would when Caroline first talked me into settling. But she was right. Turns out I needed roots more than I knew. Do you ever think about her, Caroline? The question slipped out before Olivia could stop it. I'm sorry, that's too personal. No, it's okay. And yeah, I think about her. Not every day anymore, but often. Mostly good memories now instead of just the hurt. He was quiet a moment. I think she'd like you. You do. Yeah, she had no patience for people who were all show and no substance. He stopped searching for words. You're real. That would have mattered to her. I don't feel real most of the time. I feel like I'm making it up as I go. That is real. Being real doesn't mean having all the answers. It just means being honest about not having them. They reached the far corner of his property and turned back. The house glowed warm in the twilight smoke rising from the chimney. It looked like home. Olivia felt a pang of something she couldn't name. Can I ask you something? Jax said suddenly. Of course. That night on the porch, before you moved to the schoolhouse, I said... He stopped, started again. I said you mattered to me. I've been wondering if I shouldn't have said that. If it was too much too soon. Olivia's heart was hammering. It wasn't too much. No. No. She took a breath. Jax, I've been a widow for 3 months. I shouldn't be feeling... She stopped, terrified to finish the sentence. Feeling what? Feeling like maybe being Edward's widow isn't the most important thing about me anymore. The words came out in a rush. I shouldn't be thinking about you the way I've been thinking about you. I shouldn't be noticing the way you look at me sometimes, or the way my chest feels when you smile. I should still be mourning. I should still be... Olivia. He said her name gentle, like it mattered. There's no should. There's just what is. And what is? He stepped closer. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. What is that I care about you, more than I probably should, given how little time we've known each other. And I hope you might care about me too, and neither of those things dishonors what we've lost. They're just new things trying to grow in old soil. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared. Me too. What if it's too soon? What if I'm just running from grief instead of actually ready for something new? Then we'll figure it out as we go, together. He reached out, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were gentle, calloused, warm. I'm not asking for promises, Olivia. I'm just asking if maybe we could see where this goes. Slow, careful, no pressure. She thought about Edward, about the promise she'd made to honor his dream, about 20 acres of nothing and 3 months of walking toward something that had never been hers to claim. She thought about choosing, about deciding what she wanted instead of what she owed. Okay, she whispered, slow and careful. Let's see where this goes. Jack smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. Okay. They walked back to the house hand in hand, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Margaret took one look at them and smiled into her stew. About time, was all she said. The second week of teaching was easier. The children were starting to settle into routine, starting to trust that Olivia wasn't going anywhere. Sarah Miller brought her a drawing of a horse. Tom Reeves stayed after class to ask questions about fractions. The youngest children were learning their letters. The oldest ones were reading actual books. But not everyone was happy about the new teacher. On Wednesday afternoon, a woman appeared in the doorway as Olivia was cleaning the blackboard. She was maybe 40, well-dressed by frontier standards, with a pinched expression. Mrs. Blackwell, Olivia said, recognizing the mayor's wife from church. Can I help you? I'm here about my son Timothy. He says you've been teaching inappropriate subjects. Olivia's stomach dropped. I'm sorry, what? He says you told the children that the earth goes around the sun. That's contrary to scripture, Miss Green. It's... Olivia stopped choosing her words carefully. It's astronomy, Mrs. Blackwell. Scientific fact. It's blasphemy, and I won't have my son exposed to such ideas. Then perhaps Timothy should be educated at home if you find basic science objectionable. Mrs. Blackwell's face went red. How dare you? I'm teaching these children facts, Mrs. Blackwell. Facts that will help them understand the world they live in. If you find that threatening, that's not my problem to solve. We'll see what the council has to say about this. She turned on her heel and marched out. Olivia sank into her chair, shaking. She'd been teaching 2 weeks and already someone wanted her fired. Maybe she wasn't cut out for this. Maybe Miss Green's small voice from the doorway. Sarah Miller. Is Mrs. Blackwell going to make you leave? I don't know, Sarah. She shouldn't. You're the best teacher we've ever had. Sarah's chin lifted. My ma said so, and Tom's pa said so, and even mean old Mr. Reeves, who never says anything nice, said you were doing good work. Something in Olivia's chest loosened. Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot. Are you going to stay? Olivia thought about running, about how easy it would be to pack up and leave, go back to St. Louis, avoid the confrontation. Then she thought about Tom understanding math for the first time, about the younger children slowly learning to read, about choosing what she wanted instead of what was easy. Yes, she said firmly, I'm going to stay. The council meeting was called for Friday evening. Olivia stood in front of the same 5 people who'd hired her 2 weeks ago, with Mrs. Blackwell sitting in the front row looking smug. Mrs. Blackwell has raised concerns about your teaching methods, the mayor said. He sounded tired. She says you're teaching things contrary to proper Christian education. I'm teaching science, Olivia said. Basic astronomy, basic biology. Facts that these children need to know to understand the world. The Bible is all they need to understand the world, Mrs. Blackwell interjected. The Bible is important, Olivia agreed carefully. But it doesn't teach arithmetic. It doesn't teach geography. It doesn't explain why the seasons change or how crops grow. Those are things these children need to know if they're going to succeed in this world. They need to know their place, Mrs. Blackwell said coldly. These are ranch children, farmers' children. They don't need fancy education filling their heads with ideas above their station. Something hot and angry flared in Olivia's chest. Their station. These children deserve every bit as much education as children in St. Louis or New York or anywhere else. They deserve to know how to read, how to think, how to question. That's not above their station, that's basic human dignity. Silence. The council members looked at each other. Finally, the rancher spoke. "Miss Green, my boy is one of your students. He's learned more in 2 weeks with you than in 6 months with the last teacher. He comes home excited about school. That's never happened before." "Mine too," the doctor said quietly. "My daughter actually asks to do her homework." The mayor looked at his wife. "Eleanor, I appreciate your concerns. But the council hired Miss Green to educate our children, and by all accounts, she's doing exactly that, unless there's evidence of actual harm." "Teaching them lies is harm," Mrs. Blackwell insisted. "Teaching them science is education." The mayor's voice was firm. "Miss Green stays. Meeting adjourned." Mrs. Blackwell stood rigid with fury and stalked out. The mayor sighed. "My apologies, Miss Green. My wife is traditional." "I understand, and I appreciate your support. Just keep doing what you're doing. These kids need someone who believes in them. Seems like you do." Olivia walked back to the schoolhouse, feeling shaky but triumphant. She'd stood up for herself. She'd fought for what she believed in. She'd chosen to stay when running would have been easier. She climbed the stairs to her small room and found a note slipped under the door. "Heard about the council meeting. Proud of you. Come to dinner Sunday if you want. Jax." Olivia held the note and felt something warm and certain settle in her chest. She did wanted dinner with Jax and Margaret, wanted to tell them about her week, wanted to see Jax's smile and feel his hand in hers, wanted to keep choosing this life she was building one small decision at a time. Sunday dinner became a routine. Every week Olivia would walk out to the ranch after church and spend the afternoon with Jax and Margaret. They'd eat, talk, laugh. Olivia would help with dishes, while Margaret told embarrassing stories about Jax as a boy. Then she and Jax would walk the property hand in hand talking about everything and nothing. "Tell me about Caroline," Olivia said one afternoon. "Really tell me. Not just the good parts." Jax was quiet for a moment. "She was stubborn. Argued with me about everything. Burned dinner more often than not because she'd get distracted. She sang off-key and talked to the chickens like they could understand her." He smiled. "She was messy, left things everywhere, drove me crazy, but she made everything feel possible, like the world was bigger and brighter just because she was in it." "You loved her." "Yeah, I did." He looked at Olivia. "But loving her doesn't mean I can't love again. Took me a long time to understand that." The word hung between them. Love. He hadn't said he loved her, not directly, but the implication was there. "I'm not ready," Olivia started. "I know, I'm not asking you to be." He squeezed her hand. "I'm just saying when you are ready, whenever that is, I'll be here." October turned to November. The children learned and grew. Tom Reeves started helping the younger ones with their reading. Sarah Miller wrote a story about a horse that Olivia hung on the wall. The smallest children could write their names. It wasn't grand or dramatic, but it was real and it mattered. Mrs. Blackwell continued to glare at Olivia in church, but said nothing more. A few parents pulled their children from school, but more enrolled. By Thanksgiving, Olivia had 27 students. "You're doing it," Margaret said one Sunday setting out pie. "Building something real. It doesn't feel real yet. Still feels like I'm pretending." "That's because you're waiting for permission to claim it. Stop waiting. This is your life. Claim it." That night, Olivia walked back to town with Jax. The air was cold and crisp, promising winter. At the schoolhouse door, Jax pulled her close. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. Olivia's heart stuttered. Yes." He kissed her gentle, careful, like she was something precious. It wasn't the passionate kiss of new love. It was something steadier, something that felt like promise. When he pulled back, Olivia was crying. "Sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I just—" "What?" "I feel guilty. For wanting this. For wanting you. Edward's only been gone 6 months and I'm—" "You're alive," Jack said firmly. "You're allowed to be alive, Olivia. You're allowed to want things, to feel things. Edward's gone. That's tragedy. But you're still here. And you get to decide what that means." "I want it to mean this," she said. "You, teaching, this life. I want it so much it scares me." "Then be scared and want it anyway." He kissed her forehead. "I'll be here. Take all the time you need." December brought the first snow. The children were excited, distracted. Olivia taught them about weather patterns and water cycles. Mrs. Blackwell sent a note saying this was exactly the kind of useless information she'd warned about. Olivia threw the note in the fire. Christmas approached. The town decided to do a program at the church, children reciting poems, singing songs, showing what they'd learned. Olivia threw herself into preparations. It was something to do. Something to focus on besides the way her chest felt tight every time she thought about Jax, about how much she wanted him, about how guilty that wanting made her feel. "Talk to me," Margaret said one afternoon. They were stringing popcorn for the church decorations. "You've been quiet all week." "I kissed Jax, or he kissed me. We kissed." "Finally." Margaret didn't look up from her threading. And I feel terrible about it. Because Edward's only been gone 6 months. Because I should still be mourning. Because you think loving someone new means you didn't love Edward enough." Margaret's voice was gentle. "Honey hearts don't work that way. They don't have a limited capacity. Loving Jax doesn't diminish what you felt for Edward. Everyone will judge me. Maybe. But they'll judge you for something no matter what you do. Might as well be judged for living." Margaret set down her needle. "Olivia, listen to me. You get one life. One. And you've already spent 6 months of it fulfilling a dead man's dream. Don't spend the rest of it seeking permission to be happy. Just be happy. Let the rest sort itself out." The Christmas program was a success. The children recited poems, sang carols, demonstrated their multiplication tables. Parents clapped and smiled. Even Mrs. Blackwell looked grudgingly impressed when her Timothy recited a poem from memory. After, there was cider and cookies in the church basement. Olivia stood against the wall, exhausted but satisfied. "You did good," Jack said, appearing beside her. "They did good. I just pointed them in the right direction." "That's called teaching." He handed her a cup of cider. "Margaret's insufferable, by the way. Keeps telling everyone her brother's courting the school teacher. Are you courting me? If you'll have me." Olivia looked around the room. At the children proud of their accomplishments. At the parents grateful for a teacher who cared. At Margaret beaming. At Ruth Harper giving her a thumbs up from across the room. At this life she'd built from nothing, one choice at a time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll have you." Jax's smile could have lit the whole room. He took her hand right there in front of everyone, and Olivia felt something inside her finally settle. This was real. This was hers. This was the life she was choosing. And for the first time since Edward died, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. Winter deepened, and the town settled into the rhythm of cold mornings and early darkness. Olivia taught through January and February, watching her students grow more confident with each passing week. Tom Reeves was reading at a level she never thought possible. Sarah Miller had started writing stories every night and bringing them to school to share. Even the youngest ones could read simple sentences now. But it was the quiet moments that meant the most. The way the children ran to greet her each morning. The way parents stopped her after church to say thank you. The way this place that had been nothing to her 6 months ago had become everything. Jax came to town every Sunday after church, and they'd walk together through the cold streets while Margaret visited with the other women. He never pushed, never demanded more than Olivia was ready to give. Just held her hand and talked about his week, his plans for the ranch, the future he was building. "I'm thinking about expanding the herd come spring," he said, one February afternoon. They were sitting in Olivia's small room above the schoolhouse, drinking coffee while snow fell outside. "Need more cattle if I'm going to make the ranch really profitable." "That sounds good." "It does. But it also means I'd need help. Can't manage a bigger herd alone." He was quiet for a moment. "Been thinking about hiring someone. Maybe building a second cabin on the property for a ranch hand." "That makes sense." Or, he started again. "Or I could build a house. A real house. Big enough for a family." Olivia's heart stuttered. "Jax, I'm not proposing. Not yet." He set down his coffee cup and took her hand. "But I'm thinking about it. Thinking about a future that includes you if you'll have it. And I wanted you to know. Wanted you to be thinking about it too." "I am thinking about it," Olivia admitted. "All the time. But Jax, I'm still Edward's only been gone 8 months. People will talk." "Let them talk." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. Not easy, but simple." He squeezed her hand. "Olivia, I love you. I've loved you since you stood up to that council and fought for your students. Maybe before that. And I know it's fast. I know people will judge. But I also know I don't want to waste time we could have together just because someone might disapprove." The words hung in the air. "I love you." He'd said it out loud, no hedging, no qualification. Olivia's throat was tight. "I care about you, so much. But love? I don't know if I'm ready to call it that." "That's okay. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." He stood, pulled her up with him, wrapped his arms around her. "But know this, whenever you're ready, I'll be here. And I'll keep loving you, whether you're ready to say it back or not." Olivia pressed her face against his chest and felt something in her break open. Not grief this time. Something else. Something that felt like permission. March brought the first signs of spring. The snow melted, revealing dead grass and mud. The children grew restless, eager for warm weather and freedom. Olivia planned a program for the end of the school year, a demonstration for parents of everything the children had learned. But before that could happen, 2 things changed everything. The first was a letter from St. Louis. It arrived on a Tuesday, forwarded through the general store. Olivia recognized her mother's handwriting and her stomach dropped. She hadn't written home since taking the teaching position. Hadn't told them about Jax. Hadn't told them anything except that she was staying in Arizona. She opened the letter with shaking hands. "Dearest Olivia, we received your last letter informing us of your decision to remain in that frontier town and teach. Your father and I are deeply concerned. It has been nearly 9 months since Edward's passing, and we feel it is time you returned home where you belong. We have spoken to the Hendersons, and they have graciously agreed to overlook the scandal of your teaching employment. Their son Robert has recently lost his wife and is in need of a proper woman to help raise his 3 children. It would be a suitable match. We expect you home by May. Your loving mother." Olivia read the letter 3 times, feeling colder with each reading. They wanted her to come home, to marry a widower she'd never met, to give up teaching, give up the life she'd built, give up Jax, to go back to being the person they wanted her to be instead of the person she'd become. "No," she said out loud to the empty room. "Absolutely not." But doubt crept in. They were her parents. They wanted what was best for her. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was being selfish, choosing her own happiness over duty. Maybe, "Stop it," she said it fierce angry. "Stop giving away your life to other people's expectations." She sat down and wrote a response immediately. "Dear Mother, thank you for your concern. However, I will not be returning to St. Louis. I have built a life here. I have students who need me, and a community that values my work. I am happy here, truly happy, for the first time in years. I hope you can respect my decision. Your loving daughter, Olivia. She mailed it before she could second-guess herself, but the letter left her shaken, reminded her that there was a whole world beyond Cottonwood Springs that saw her choices as wrong, as scandalous, as inappropriate for a widow barely 9 months past her husband's death. That evening, Jax found her sitting on the schoolhouse steps, staring at nothing. What's wrong? She handed him the letter from her mother, watched his jaw tighten as he read. You're not going, he said. Not a question. No, I'm not. She took the letter back. But Jax, they're right about one thing. It hasn't even been a year. We're whatever we are, it's too fast. People will talk. Let them. You keep saying that, but it matters. My reputation matters. The school's reputation matters. If people think I'm... She stopped searching for words. If they think I'm some loose widow who moved on too quickly, they'll pull their children from my class. Everything I've built will fall apart. Jax sat beside her on the steps. What do you want me to do? Step back. Give you space. I don't know. Maybe. I need time to think. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt quickly masked. Okay. You want space. I'll give you space. But Olivia, don't let fear make this decision. Don't let other people's judgment convince you to give up something real. I'm not. I just need to be smart about this. Being smart and being scared aren't the same thing. He left, and Olivia sat alone on the steps, feeling like she'd made a terrible mistake. But what else could she do? Her parents were right. It was too fast, too soon, too much. The second thing that changed everything happened 2 weeks later. Olivia was teaching geography when Sarah Miller's father burst into the schoolroom wild-eyed and panicked. Flood? He gasped. The river's flooding. Everyone needs to get to high ground, now. Chaos erupted. Children screamed. Parents appeared grabbing their kids. Olivia tried to maintain order, but it was hopeless. Within minutes, the schoolroom was empty, except for 3 children whose parents hadn't arrived yet. Sarah, Tom, and a little boy named Danny, whose family lived on the far side of town. Come on, Olivia said, grabbing their hands. We're going to the church. It's on the hill. We'll be safe there. They ran through streets already ankle-deep in water. The river had jumped its banks, pouring through town faster than anyone had anticipated. People shouted, grabbing belongings, leading animals to higher ground. The water was rising fast. Too fast. They made it to the church and found it packed with people. Olivia pushed the children inside and did a quick head count. Everyone was accounted for except, where's Margaret? Ruth Harper grabbed her arm. Have you seen Margaret Xavier? Olivia's blood went cold. No. Why? She was at the general store when it started. Stores on low ground. If the water. Olivia didn't wait to hear more. She ran back out into the floodwater, now past her knees, searching. The general store was 3 streets over, already surrounded by rushing water. She saw Margaret on the porch, trapped water rising around her. Margaret! Olivia screamed. Get back! Margaret yelled. It's too dangerous! But Olivia was already wading through the current, using buildings for support. The water pulled at her skirt, threatening to sweep her away. She made it to the store and grabbed Margaret's hand. Come on. The water's too strong. I don't care, we're not staying here. They waded together, arms linked, fighting the current. Olivia's foot slipped and she went under. Water filled her mouth, her nose. Strong hands grabbed her, hauled her up. Jax. He'd appeared out of nowhere, soaked and furious. What the hell were you thinking? He shouted over the roar of the water. She was trapped. So you decided to drown too? But his hands were gentle as he helped them both toward higher ground, his body shielding them from the worst of the current. They made it to the church, collapsed inside, all 3 of them gasping. Margaret was crying. Olivia was shaking. Jax held them both, his face buried in Olivia's wet hair. "Don't ever do that again," he said roughly. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I couldn't leave her," Olivia whispered. "I couldn't." I know. But God, Olivia." His voice broke. "I can't lose you. I can't." The flood receded by evening, leaving mud and destruction in its wake. The general store was ruined. 3 houses were damaged beyond repair. But no one had died. Everyone was safe. The town spent the next week cleaning up, rebuilding. Olivia's schoolhouse had survived with minimal damage, some water in the first floor, nothing that couldn't be fixed. She threw herself into helping with repairs, teaching classes in the church basement, while the schoolhouse dried out. And she thought about what Jax had said. "I can't lose you." She thought about running into a flood without hesitation, because Margaret needed her. About how this town had become hers in ways St. Louis never had. About how the life she'd built here mattered more than her mother's approval or society's judgment. About how loving Jax didn't diminish what she'd felt for Edward. It just meant her heart had room for more than one story. On Sunday morning, exactly 1 week after the flood, Olivia walked out to the ranch. She found Jax repairing fence-damaged shirt off, despite the cool morning air. He looked up when she approached, surprise and wariness in his eyes. "Olivia, I thought you wanted space." "I did. I was wrong." She stopped a few feet away, suddenly nervous. "Can we talk?" He set down his tools, pulled his shirt back on. "Of course." They sat on the porch steps, the same place they'd sat so many times before. Olivia took a breath and said what she'd come to say. "I got scared. My mother's letter made me question everything. Made me think maybe I was moving too fast, maybe I needed to slow down, maybe people would judge me and it would ruin everything I'd built." She turned to look at him. "But then the flood happened, and I ran into rushing water without thinking because Margaret needed help, because she's family, because this place is home. And I realized I've been so worried about what other people think that I forgot to pay attention to what I know." "And what do you know?" His voice was careful, guarded. "I know I love you." The words came out strong, certain. "I know it's been less than a year since Edward died. I know people will talk and judge and say it's too soon. But I also know that I don't want to waste whatever time we have together just because someone might disapprove. I know that loving you doesn't dishonor Edward's memory. It just means I'm choosing to keep living. And I know—" Her voice shook. "I know I want to marry you if the offer's still open." Jax stared at her like he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. "Are you, Olivia? Are you asking me to marry you?" "Yes, I think I am." She laughed, surprised by her own boldness. "Is that all right? Can a woman do that?" "A woman can do whatever she wants." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Yes, God, yes. 1,000 times yes. People will talk. Let them talk. My mother will be furious. She'll get over it. Mrs. Blackwell will probably try to get me fired. The council won't let her. You're too good at what you do." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. "Olivia Green, are you sure? Really sure? Because once we do this, I'm never letting you go." "I'm sure." And she was. More sure than she'd been of anything in her entire life. "I'm ready to stop being Edward's widow and start being Olivia Xavier." They married in April one year, almost to the day after Edward's death. It was a small ceremony, just Margaret Ruth Harper, a handful of friends, and the town council. Reverend Mills performed the service, and if he had opinions about the speed of Olivia's remarriage, he kept them to himself. Mrs. Blackwell didn't attend. Neither did several other families. Olivia's mother sent a letter so cold it might have been written in ice. But the church was full anyway. Full of children who'd learned to read under Olivia's teaching. Full of parents grateful for a teacher who cared. Full of people who'd become family. Olivia wore a simple blue dress, not white, not black, just blue, and carried wildflowers Margaret had picked that morning. When Jax took her hand at the altar, his grip was steady and sure. "I promise to love you," he said, when it was time for vows. To support your work, to honor your choices, to give you space to grow. I promise to be your partner, not your owner. To build a life with you, not for you. And I promise to remind you every single day that you matter. Olivia's throat was tight. I promise to keep living. To keep choosing this life, this love, even when it's scary. I promise to let myself be happy without guilt. And I promise to remind you every single day that finding you in that desert was the best thing that ever happened to me. When they kissed, the church erupted in applause. Sarah Miller threw petals. Tom Reeves whistled. Margaret cried into her handkerchief. The reception was held at the ranch, now Olivia's ranch too. There was food and music and dancing. Olivia danced with Jax, with Margaret, with half the town. She laughed until her sides hurt. She felt light in a way she hadn't felt since before Edward got sick. As evening fell and the guests began to leave, Olivia found herself standing on the porch, looking out at the land that was now hers. The same land she'd ridden across months ago, lost and broken, and certain she had nothing left to live for. Jax came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. Happy? Yes. She leaned back against him. I'm happy. Really, truly happy. Good. That's all I ever wanted for you. They stood there, as the stars came out, watching their guests ride away into the twilight. Margaret came out to join them, linking her arm through Olivia's. Welcome home, she said simply. Home. The word settled over Olivia like a benediction. This was home. Not because of the land or the house, or even the ring on her finger, but because she'd chosen it. Because she'd decided over and over again to keep living. To keep reaching for something real instead of something safe. The school year ended in May. Olivia's students gave their final presentations showing everything they'd learned. Every child could read now. Every child could write. They knew mathematics and geography and science. They knew that learning mattered, that education was a gift worth fighting for. The town council voted unanimously to keep Olivia on for another year. Mrs. Blackwell objected, of course, but she was outvoted. Even the mayor told his wife it was time to let it go. That summer, Jax built an addition to the ranch house, 2 rooms and a real kitchen. For when we have children, he said, and Olivia felt her heart swell with possibility. She spent her days helping with the ranch, her evenings planning lessons for the next school year. She wrote to her mother trying to build bridges. The response was cold, but not cutting. It was a start. In August, she got a letter from a lawyer in Tucson. Someone wanted to buy Edward's land. Not for much, $20 an acre, but it was something. Olivia signed the papers without hesitation, used the money to buy books for the school. It felt right, using Edward's dream to build something that actually mattered. September came, and school started again. She had 31 students now. Word had spread about the teacher who cared, and families were moving to Cottonwood Springs specifically for the education. The town was growing, changing, becoming something real. On her wedding anniversary, Jax took her back to the desert crossroads where they'd first met. They stood there together, hand in hand, looking at the empty land. What do you see? He asked. Possibility, Olivia said. I see endless possibility. Not anymore what you've lost. No, not anymore. She turned to face him. That day you found me, I was so lost I couldn't even see a future. Couldn't imagine wanting one. And you didn't save me exactly. But you showed me I could save myself. That I could choose differently. That being lost wasn't the same as being finished. You did the work, Jack said. I just walked beside you. You did more than that. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. You believed in me when I'd forgotten how. You gave me time and space and patience, and you never asked me to be anything other than exactly who I was. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. That's what love is. Not changing someone, just giving them room to become who they're meant to be. They rode home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The ranch house glowed warm in the distance. Margaret was on the porch waving. The horses in the corral nickered a greeting. Everything smelled like sage and possibility. That night, lying in bed with Jax's arm around her, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here. From St. Louis to Tucson to the desert crossroads to this bed, this man, this life. She thought about Edward and the love they'd shared, real but not enough. She thought about grief and guilt and the long walk toward healing. She thought about choosing to live instead of just survive. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Jax's voice was sleepy content. "For finding me. For taking me home." "You found your own way home," he said. "I just walked with you." Maybe that was true. Maybe home wasn't a place someone took you to. Maybe it was something you built yourself one choice at a time until you looked around and realized you'd arrived. Olivia closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Tomorrow she'd wake early and plan lessons for her students. She'd help Jax with the ranch work. She'd have coffee with Margaret and laugh at her stories. She'd lived this life, she'd chosen this life, she'd fought for this life that was finally completely authentically hers. The widow who'd whispered she was lost in the desert had found something better than the map she'd been following. She'd found herself. And in finding herself, she'd found home. Not in the land Edward had bought or the dream he'd imagined, but in the courage to choose differently, in the strength to keep living, in the love that grew in the space between who she'd been and who she was becoming. She'd followed the cowboy home that day in the desert, but the truth was simpler and more profound than that. She'd followed herself home, and that made all the difference.